It's a great pleasure to talk at these events. Some of you will know Bosch as a traditional tier one big company, generates about 40 billion euros a year out of the automotive space, 70 billion euro company, keeping you warm at night, security systems, things like that, big corporate. I'm in a slightly unique role. I'm part of Automotive strategy. We're a global team based worldwide, and you'll hear me say things like cars are dead. Quite disruptive when you're creating that kind of revenue out of the OEM market. Well, as we've just seen, there's a lot of research shifting that way. People squirm, a couple of people there starting to shake their heads already. Great. Please have an opinion. Come and talk to me, come and talk to us. Join the industry and have an opinion, because at the moment we're about forming opinions. I'm going to show you what our future is starting to look like, where we think this is going to go. Some of you will agree, some of you will disagree. Both are important stories. So that's really important to me. I hope you'll see a little bit of a change in what you know about Bosch today in me, the way we start to speak and how we're coming across publicly. As I say, it's all about an opinion. So as I said, part of a global team. We're based currently out of Chicago and London. Why that? Two really interesting cities doing really interesting stuff in the space. We're going to Mexico City next year, India, probably a location in China, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll have 6 or 7 mega cities worldwide. We're operating locally, we're embedded locally and learning cool stuff. So you may not know that Chicago is an open data city for mobility. They're doing a lot of great things there, huge startup community, really interesting student community, dedicated developers. These guys are California trained pitchers. You will hand over your money to them in your sleep. They are very, very sophisticated in what they're doing around the mobility space. They've also got really interesting problems. School children caught on gang crossfire on their school commute every morning. These are school kids being shot at by gangs. The gangs are in bed with the operators in the city, transport services, governments, and they have a relationship where they know where the gangs operate, they know when things are going to kick off, and they are trying to work with the city and the city's mobility needs to manage that problem. Very unique for Bosch to engage in that kind of space, but that local knowledge helps inform a global strategy. Where else are the similar problems? London, I'm proud to say, it's not quite so prolific, but that safety element in mobility is a really interesting theme. So we're starting to operate globally, but picking up a local vision everywhere. A couple of traditional corporate slides. So I just want to show you this. I've mentioned some of the big numbers. Why is this particularly relevant to Bosch? Because if we don't do anything about our technology in serving the OEMs and recognizing the OEMs are starting to put tier ones under pressure, I'll come back to tier one in a minute. We've already gone to tier 4. Let me explain. If we don't do anything about this change, we're going to start to lose out on those revenue streams. We've also got a human resources problem. We employ 90,000 people worldwide in fuel cell technology, which is going to be redundant in 10 years. Now, regardless of whether you agree with it, the political agenda, certainly in Europe, is starting to focus on your tailpipe emissions. Not the global environmental impact, not the end-to-end dust to rust, your tailpipe. So what do we do? What's the journey we go on now with those 90,000 people? Some of the fuel cells, and I'll mention it, diesel, still has a role over the next 15 years. If you're buying a diesel car today, legally, we have to service that vehicle for 15 years in market. So what do we do with these people? Personally, their CVs, the upskill process, to make sure by 2039, 2040, their diesel the year before, what are they doing the following year? It's going to be very quick. So again, we're the engine inside Bosch trying to understand that internal challenge on the company. And it's direct, that's huge. Think about then the German economy. German economy, 1 in 6 jobs directly tied to automotive. 82% of pension funds in Germany depend on the success of automotive. If you're over 45 in Germany at the moment, you need to be looking at your options very, very carefully. Over the next 20 years, the automotive industry is going to go through a huge shift. What does that mean to that whole financial thing? Now start reading those articles about Brexit with a slightly different thought in mind. It's very, very interesting as to how that is happening. London, why London? 3rd largest technical community in the world. There's 16 billion euros going around there in digital technology. It's a huge environment. I'm very pleased that Bosch are now embedded right in the heart of that in Spitalfields market. Very exciting, good outreach, local information. Just to show this, so my background is in autonomous driving. I was formerly at Jaguar Land Rover, and some of you will have met me there. I was their autonomous driving lead, did that for 3 years, and then got introduced to Bosch. The reason I jumped back over is I was going to conferences and everybody asked me when the autonomous car was ready. There are 103 autonomous offerings worldwide currently being developed. They're very good engineering journeys. They're very exciting. There's a lot of good tech being invested in the space. What I'm interested in and what Bosch are interested in is what are we going to do with this tech? So autonomous tech, yes, we're a world leader. We support most of the major offerings. But where does the tech come first? Where does it pop up? How does it change my life? How old do people need to be to use autonomous technology? What does it mean for the aging population? So it's those kind of city questions that we're asking. And when I talk, I'm talking about dense urban. So we're focused around connectivity, demographics are changing, and that urbanization element. Obviously, the energy usage is a big challenge for us. Bosch haven't gone into the battery market. Reasons, huge capital outlay, we're probably a bit late, but also two, battery and electrification, there's a lot of work that we're having to invest to really understand that big vision. So politically, we're moving very, very quickly. By quickly, I mean over the next 15 years. The next 50 years, next 100 years of innovation, what does that really mean to the space? So the fuel cell's changing today. What's hydrogen's role? What's hydrogen in our home domestic boilers, large commercial heating, shipping, worldwide freight? We need to think about the fuel cell that we're in. So we're supporting electric, obviously, for various options, not least our customer base, our traditional OEMs are all going into the electric space. But we were really trying to understand and inform the company on that long-term vision. So again, I'm a sort of 15, 20-year strategy person. Don't have a crystal ball, and I'm coming back to the opinion. Tell me your opinions, argue with me, spar with me, give me other ideas. It's all very, very interesting to join up the conversation. My dedicated focus in London, my kind of daytime job is around that mobility topic. So how do we work with TfL? How do we understand city ecosystem, people's needs? You'll see various apps and announcements popping up from Bosch now trying to look at safety, ride sharing. We've made a couple of acquisitions, which we're very excited about. We'll be announcing those in the new year. We're engaging in the startup space as well. How can such a big corporation, think 400,000 people, 74 billion euros, 9 guys in a shed anywhere in Europe are coming up with really, really good ideas and challenging some of our core technology. So we have a responsibility to engage with those guys, promote them, embed them in the company, or you know what, back them. I'm a strong believer in this, backed by Bosch. When you think of all the sectors that we operate in, and Tata are here as well, similar portfolio, big, big corporates, there's a really lovely message to the startup community as to what we can do to pick up those opportunities and embed them into some really, really interesting use cases. So this is the Bosch vision, and you'll have seen this publicly. As a subservient tier one, we did this as a project with Daimler. Daimler went into Photoshop and put the Daimler badge on all of the vehicles and now uses publicly as well. But officially, it is the Bosch vision. Agree with it, disagree with it. I just want to take a few minutes to explore it with you. If I don't have a pointer on here. Right in the middle of the picture, there is a driven traditional fuel cell vehicle. We recognize that they're here today. There's many of them parked nearby. They're not going to go away quickly. That's our key message. As I mentioned, legally, we still have to service them, the aftermarket. People are still going to be using these in various different scenarios in the future. Dense urban? Don't know. London especially is very, very aggressive on its vehicle now. So Regent Street, Oxford Street, you'll have seen the public announcements, electrification. But think about logistics, vans, products, Amazon's ambition, within an hour delivery. There's still certain fuel cells, there's still certain vehicle automation that's needed to deliver those kind of services. So we have to think about that. Nevertheless, automation is coming, depends who you speak to. I think it's already here. Look at Waymo in Phoenix, 250 vehicles. Just be clear, they are unescorted, they are live, serving 250 families with their 100% mobility needs. There isn't an escort there isn't a guy on a bike out of shot trying to communicate with that vehicle or managing a panic button. They are automated. Uber, you'll have seen, that announcement's been a year in the making, 24,000 vehicles now on order with Volvo. Autonomous technology is coming very, very quickly. The OEM piece is a little bit slower. Why that? Because the first traditional OEM, Daimler, Jaguar, Land Rover, whoever you like, to kill a mother and baby on the school commute with their autonomous technology, can lock the gates that night. It's going to be very, very aggressive because we're not going to accept it. So that safety case, that connectivity, that ability not to be hacked is absolutely fundamental to our technology to maintain the sort of safety. The difference is in mobility. Give me my mobility and I expect it to be safe. When I buy an iPhone, I expect it to perform. I'm not interested in the code or having a big legal battle or having any risk. I want safe mobility on demand. But Uber's struggling with that. If you order an Uber and the service isn't available within 4 minutes, something like 30% dropout rate, 4 minutes, they'll delete the service, find another mode of transport. So people are very fickle in their mobility options. These are all new things that Bosch have to learn, and we're going through that process. Now, I'd be very happy to take any questions over the vision. Just quickly, you'll notice, flooding the metro with water and using it for parcels, really interesting idea, probably unlikely to happen. So we have to engage with the current city infrastructure. Ride sharing, bike sharing, people are walking, we're looking at promoting other modes, all traditional things. It's becoming, I would say, a fairly common message now, ride sharing, cycle schemes, you're seeing this technology pop up. Of course, we're investing a lot into our e-bike services and pushing those manufacturers to get those on the streets. We think they're a very good means of transport. But then if everybody jumps out of their cars and goes onto bikes, what's the real impact? So we're using our connectivity piece to understand the impact on the city and the flow of people. We haven't cracked this yet. I'm not sure where the shops are in this picture. I'm not a huge shopper myself, but I know my girlfriend would probably have a frustration in that. The point is, shops are going to a more personalized service. You would book an appointment, maybe you have some options that are already allocated for you, but you're going in for a much higher level of concierge personal service. Your mass Primarks, your big Tesco's, all of that is starting to disappear as these are delivered to your door. It's done personally at home. More shaking heads, good. Think then also too, people are at leisure, people are walking around, there's green belts here, opening up environmental highways, but see the railway in the background. How do we work to maximize efficiency on our public services? Because that's the big pain point. It's very expensive for me to come up on the train here this morning than it is for me to drive. But actually going forward, if you can maximize the usage of all of those services, we see the cost models really starting to change. You create a bigger shift. What's the journey we have to go on? What technology can we employ? How do we work with people like HS2 to understand we can maximize the efficiency? You talk to the guys traditionally serving HS2, they're building one of the biggest car parks in Birmingham, 3,500 and something spaces to service that train. Comes online 2033. That's a massive car park if we've already gone automated in the same time frame. So we're having to understand now these industry conversations and what does that really mean to inform what this future vision looks like. I just want to show you 4 things. As I mentioned, those are the 4 things that we're particularly focused on. How are we trying to engage? How are we trying to create this shift? Well, we're running things like our own hackathon. So I'd like to run just a brief video. This was in Chicago a month ago, and I'm actually shooting off at lunchtime today to run our first hackathon in London. So that, for me, that invented for life piece is a really, really interesting one, because we're about access to employment, access to mobility, access for different needs in the city. That is really why we're running those hackathons, to understand that local information. Also too, think what it does when I mention that HR perspective. It engages us with a very different audience, very technically capable audience, very technically and opinionated audience about their mobility needs. So the hackathon's a very useful mechanism to us, and I urge you all just to follow some of those events. Obviously the hack's not new, but the dedicated mobility and what we're getting out of those hackathon events is really, really interesting. So it's an interesting time for Bosch. I hope that's moved some of the perception around what we're trying to do, maybe move some of you away from what you know about us as a tier 1. I think if you think about the sort of platform we're hoping to build up in terms of connecting all of this up across industry, the heating in your system, the mobility in your vehicles, the mobility in your cities when it's not a vehicle, we think we've got a really strong brand to play, and we're very excited to go on that journey with you. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I've provoked a bit of thought.